Well, hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. It was interesting coming at Cemetery Junction because I distinctly remember when it came out and not really having a great deal of interest in it, and it sort of sailed by. I knew it was quite a nostalgia fest film, being set in the 70s and sort of really leaning into sort of the culture and the sort of counterculture and musicality of the time. And partly the reason I dismissed it is because it's written and directed by Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant. And there is nothing broadly wrong with Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, but based on their television output, they aren't two creatives who their style has never particularly appealed to me. And unfortunately, when it comes to comedy, the nature of comedy is subjective. So there's no reason for me to pick apart why something like The Office or Afterlife doesn't really work for me, because ultimately it's just the comedic style that I enjoy isn't within the same Venn diagram, or at least not enough in the same Venn diagram as the kind of output and the kind of style that Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant have. That being said, I do think they're very funny performers, and particularly Stephen Merchant, anytime he's come up in any of the films that I've seen, I think at least one during this series, I do think he is an actor who I think is very good and very funny. I think the style they go for leans more towards the awkward, second-hand embarrassment humour that was very popular in the mid-noughties and continues to be, in that sort of awkward tension type of comedy. And it's not something I enjoy. I dislike that. It makes me more uncomfortable than it does make me laugh. And it's therefore just not an experience I personally enjoy. But as I say, as a craft, that's no criticism on them. Although, as you can imagine, Cemetery Junction, I was thinking, at the time, that's the reason I completely waved it by. Now, when I chose to watch this, I actually had forgotten that this was a Gervais Merchant vehicle. I had a distinct memory of not watching it at the time and remembering it was set in the 70s and had a very sort of countercultural message. And that at the time it was received very popularly. And so I thought, it's short, it's simple, let's give this a go. And I have to say, I really clicked with it. I think there is something to be said about the right balance of comedy and drama. And the thing I really like about Cemetery Junction is the fact that, broadly speaking, it is a drama first. It just simply happens to have comedic moments and funny, quirky characters. But as I've said, when it comes to comedy drama, or dramedy, as has become the popular parlance, and the thing that frustrates me about it, and why I really dislike that kind of attitude, is that it's very binary. It implies that you can't have a drama that is funny without it being a comedy drama. Whereas I think that by the nature, if sort of a kitchen sink or soapbox drama or any kind of drama really, reflects normal people's lives. And of course you would have moments of tension, moments of darkness, but also moments of humour and light and natural chemistry, because that's how people's lives go. And so when I'm watching Cemetery Junction, I'm not watching it going, where are the comedic setups, where are the moments? Because to treat it like a comedy, my instinct is to go, okay, well, every so many minutes there needs to be a joke, there needs to be setting things up. Comedy is like horror. It's very much about laying groundwork. And when jokes aren't happening, jokes should be in the process of being set up and sort of building the bigger world so that the jokes can sort of escalate within that world. But here I didn't do that. I watched it just simply as a really good character piece, and frankly that made it such a easy experience. Over the last 2 days I've talked a lot about the nature of basic and simple, and this definitely falls within the simple not basic category, where there is nothing particularly groundbreaking about this story. It follows three young guys who are all in their 20s, in the 70s. So there you've got, let me see if I get their names right. Paul, who is known as Snork, Bruce, and Freddie. And Freddie's sort of, broadly speaking, Freddie is the lead. Although it is very much a three-hander. It's about these three friends and the fact that they're sort of coming of age, they're in their 20s, but they're still finding themselves as people. And sort of, you have Freddie, who previously worked in a factory, but has managed to acquire himself a much more corporate-style job where he's selling life insurance, but he's assured that if he does well, he can climb the corporate ladder and have the sort of economic progression that people of his area, being Cemetery Junction, aren't used to, because it's supposed to be a sort of poor working class, 70s backdrop. And the idea is that this kind of opportunity would give him the social mobility to be able to escape that. But of course, the life insurance and the fact that sort of plays a part within his character, the fact that he is essentially having to sell people, the idea that they should sacrifice the joys in their life for almost security. And of course that mirrors his own experience, the idea that he's becoming more distant from his friends and trying to be more like the people he sees around him. People like Ray Fiennes, who is his boss, and there's another guy who's sort of the person he could be in a few years, the sort of, sort of shark salesman type. And you see him sort of, as I say, sacrificing joy for security, for stability, just like the people he sells the life insurance to. And so, the story is more about him than anyone else, and he is the lens by which we're supposed to see this world. But frankly, as I say, it is a three-hander. Almost four, and I'll come on to why in a second, but you have Bruce and Snork, and Bruce is almost the second lead, because Bruce has a very, clear and defined arc about resentment, about someone who he's sort of he's the Fonz of the group, as it were, where he is a guy who, is handsome, popular, does well with the ladies, lives this life. He likes going out, drinking, talking to girls, getting into fights, spray painting, being coarse, getting into trouble. He's very much reveling in the life that they've had, the one that Freddie is trying to leave. And what you come to realise is that a lot of his arrested development comes from the fact that he has a past with his father and an absent mother who, a family history that has caused him to become bitter and angry. And of course he has that strange tension where he seems to be happy and thriving within this world, and yet is constantly claims he is desperate to leave. And then you have Snork, and Snork, unfortunately, of the three, is probably not... His arc is less defined. His is much more about, he's this sort of... He is the strange, weird one, the one that definitely feels in the camp of the sort of Gervais Merchant type character who is a bit adorable, but also very weird, and you're like, he's constantly nurturing awkward environments to set up sort of comedic moments that are sort of tension-laden but also funny. But he is, again, a sweet character, and you can sort of see a minor arc for him as well, although his is more traditionally romance-centred. And again, with all three of them, though, it is about finding place and sort of deciding who you want to be in the world, a la coming of age. And then, of course, you have Felicity Jones, who plays Julie, who, frankly, is the fourth lead. Because like I say, unfortunately, Snork's, because his story is more sort of the comedic aspect of it, Julie's is probably more dramatic and in line with Freddie and Bruce, where it's about her similarly very graduate style, her life decisions being laid out before her, the sort of the repeating mistakes of her parentage being the mistakes that she is going to make, and you see her sort of grapple with the desire to be for freedom, whilst also slowly the cage closes in around her. And as I say, this is not groundbreaking plots. These are, in terms of coming of age, in terms of like that sort of 70s, like a counterculture type of story about, the era in which people are starting to push away from traditionalist roles and sort of find their own definition of freedom. And of course, you would make the case that, well, isn't that a 60s thing? But that's even called out. The idea that, where they live almost feels like it missed the 60s. And so you have people like Ray Fiennes, like Ricky Gervais's character, who is Freddie's dad, who very much sort of exemplify 50s characters, where, or the sort of ideals of the 50s, whereas you have sort of, these people like Freddie, like Julie, like Bruce even, and Snork, who sort of much more 70s children, and they feel the sense that that society is falling, but their community is falling behind societal times. And and it just has such a good character to it, and it's just such a good personality, and you genuinely care about the stories of these people. And it's just written in a way, as I say, the comedy perfectly complements the drama, so that you're endeared to the characters. So when they do something incredibly stupid, like this huge set piece at the big gala event that sort of is exclusive to people who are doing well in the life insurance business, it's so funny because you genuinely feel the awkwardness of the characters, but it also feels characterful. It feels like decisions, that it's very organic to these people to have made these decisions, and so therefore to put themselves in an incredibly embarrassing environment. But then, saying that, they also make very sweet decisions. There are moments where you see each of their families and their environments, and sort of say Freddie with even though Julie's engaged to someone else, you see Freddie bonding with, or trying to please Julie's mother and father, and but not in a way that it's simply to try and win her. It's more because he genuinely feels a connection to them for one reason and another. And that's the funny thing about this as well. The Julie-Freddie romance, or, what there is of it, is so less about them falling in love and more about them finding freedom. And this has only just occurred to me sort of as I've discussed this, but there is something almost like anti-Graduate about it, the film The Graduate, where, of course, The Graduate is about sort of acting out against, rebelling against sort of societal norms, but ultimately your decisions being destructive. This almost feels like the antidote to that, because it has similar elements to it. It's not the same plot by any stretch, but there are moments that you think, actually, this particular scene does remind me a little bit of The Graduate, or, this kind of environment, with more of a British tint to it, and as I say, only just in a few fractions of moments. But as I say, the Freddie-Julie sort of, chemistry, they do have good chemistry, and you do genuinely believe that they like each other romantically, even though they can't act on it. You still feel that sense of the fact that what they see in each other more than anything is both their mutual desire for freedom and to sort of expand their horizons. And I just think this film so organically does that, and so naturally creates this beautiful setting with... It's not beautiful in the traditional sense, but it sort of, as I say, there is something atmospheric. As I was saying yesterday with The Beguiled, we have we've sort of lost that sense of romanticising the past to a degree. I think that this is an example where it's a sort of romanticisation of the 70s. It's not supposed to be a real depiction of it. It's supposed to be, as someone remembers it. And I think that, like I say, injects it with personality, and there's this real sense of music to it. And again, not everything has to be music focused or, a musical, or even sort of have this incredible soundtrack to it. To have musicality, I think, the more that I've been doing this project, the more I've sort of come to realise the importance of musicality, even in moments when there isn't a soundtrack, as in a musical soundtrack, where you just get a sense of, if you could hear music now, this is what it would sound like. And when you do hear music, it perfectly complements what you're watching. Its function is not to enhance it or to tell you how to feel. It's almost, yes, when you do hear this song or this piece of music, that is exactly what would have been in my head if there had been silence. And I genuinely think this is a really good film. A really sweet film. It is possibly the film it's perfect to watch after having seen The Beguiled yesterday. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because this all helps me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 250 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.